This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so the state of Alabama announced that they are offering small business grants up to $15,000 for certain expenses, budgeted and unanticipated expenses related specifically to COVID-19 and the economic shutdown. The program's called Revive Alabama, Revive AL, plan to help small businesses. And so first I want to show you the website that you can go to get full details of the information. It is revenue.alabama.gov/revive-Alabama. You can also just kind of go on to Google and Google the phrase Revive Alabama, and it's going to direct you to this site. But this gives you some in-depth detail about are you eligible to apply? How do I apply and when do I apply? Now, applications opened, the portal opened on July 16. They close day after tomorrow. I realize that we are very late in the game putting this out on the 23rd, but in all honesty, we were unable to access anything about the application. As we're a C6, we were ineligible to apply. And so while I could have just told you that it exists, which we did by email, I couldn't really give any further instruction about what that would look like and how to apply. But now we, thanks to one of our members, we do have some screenshots of what that application process looks like. So that's what today is predominantly about. We don't have exquisite detail on eligibility other than what you can read for yourself here in the eligibility requirements. So I can't, whereas with some of the other SBA assistance programs that rolled out that we did webinars on in April, we had a lot of help from the SBDC that we were able to go and learn from and regurgitate back to you. We haven't had that for this program. So unfortunately, what you read is what you get, and that's what pretty much all I know. If you do have specific questions that you can't find on here, if you can get them to me today, we will do everything in our power to find the answer for you by tomorrow. But again, do note that in the when do I apply, you have to have that application. You have to complete this application by midnight on July 25th. So that is Saturday. So be sure you make a note of that. Again, this is being recorded, but you want that website address so you can go get those specifics for you. So as far as the application, how do you apply? Those businesses have to complete monthly information in MAT, My Alabama Taxes. That's a portal where you go to submit your sales tax, your consumer use tax, your withholding, your Alabama state withholding tax. If you pay those taxes, you should have a My Alabama Taxes account, a MAT account. So you would first log into your MAT account, and that is through the Alabama Department of Revenue, the My Alabama Taxes. And once you log in, this should be similar to the screen you will see. Obviously, you have, different businesses will have different accounts listed here. Ignore, none of this is relevant here. What we want to look at is over here. It says, I want to, on the right side of the screen, manage payments and returns, obtain a new tax account, add access to an existing. You want the very next one that says apply for a Revive Alabama Small Business Grant. So your first step would be to click on that apply for a Revive grant. And then once you do that, the next screen that you will see is instructions. And so here's the brief eligibility. We will read through that very quickly. Must be a resident of Alabama with a permanent place of business located in Alabama. You must have been in business and fully operational as of March 1, 2020. You had no more than 19 full-time equivalent employees as of March 1, 2020. And so that's a number we haven't seen on assistance programs to date. So the no more than 19. So if you hit 20, you're not eligible. And that is the full-time equivalents. And if you need help with figuring out what your FTEs are, you can contact us. We'll try to help you figure that out as well. And that is of March 1, 2020. You are not a subsidiary or owned by a business with more than 50 full-time equivalent employees, or part of a larger business enterprise with more than 50 full-time equivalent employees. You have filed Alabama income tax or financial institution excise tax returns for both 2017 and 18 tax years if you are required, and you have completed those as of March 1, 2020. Businesses that existed during 2019 must also verify that they will timely file and pay 2019 income taxes or financial institution excise taxes in accordance with the current extension deadlines. Eligible small businesses formed on or after January 1, 2020 must verify that they will timely file and pay income tax or financial institution excise tax due for the 2020 tax year. Now, your question may be, how do I demonstrate that? We don't know. I would suggest you apply and then await guidance on how you demonstrate that after you make application and are awarded. I expect there will be guidance given for those businesses that fall within those brackets. You do not have debt and collections greater than $500 as of March 1, 2020. You have incurred eligible expenses due to the interruption of business, such as mortgage interest, rent, payroll, and utilities. Expenses have not already been covered by federal programs such as the Federal Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or any other COVID-19 recovery funds. I've already had the question that, well, if I got a PPP loan, but I've used all of my PPP already, and they, possibly were used up within the first 8 weeks, and you were an early recipient, and you've got additional expenses. If you must be sure, because the government will look at that as quote unquote double dipping. You must be sure that you're able to differentiate and show that no existing assistance programs that you've received to date will be used for what you are requesting. If you do ask for additional dates to be covered. The next thing is your gross revenue is less than $5 million in 1 year, and your business does not exist for the purpose of advancing partisan political activities, does not directly lobby federal or state officials, and has not employed or otherwise worked with a lobbyist as defined in Section 36-25-1 Code of Alabama 1975 at any point during 2020. So you say, yes, I agree. The next screen you will see will be about eligibility. And these are going to all be yes or no questions. They're all required. Is your business based in Alabama with a permanent place of business in Alabama? Are you a subsidiary or owned by another business? Are you part of a larger enterprise? Is the applicant a disregarded entity? Were you in business in 2017? Were you in business in 2018? Were you in business in 2019? In 2020? Was your business in good standing with the Alabama Department of Revenue as of March 1, 2020? Did your business incur eligible expenses due to the interruption of business, such as mortgage interest, rent, payroll, and utilities? Does your business exist for the purpose of advancing partisan politics? Does it directly lobby federal or state officials, or has it employed or otherwise worked as a lobbyist as defined by that section previously mentioned? And with the assumption that if you answer correctly for all eligibility models, you're going to be able to advance to the next screen for processing of your claim. So it will ask, how many full-time equivalent employees did you have as of March 1, 2020? Remember, if it is 19 or fewer, you should still remain eligible. If you put in 20 or more, you're obviously going to be rendered ineligible for the grant program. How much has your business paid toward cost of business interruption called by required closures in connection to COVID-19? Now, the examples that they give are rent, payroll, and utilities. From what I understand, in addition to those expenses, you are also able to request reimbursement for, and I would highly encourage you that if you do request reimbursement for certain items, that you most likely do retain all of your receipts, but I would certainly suggest you collect those receipts and have them at your ready. For example, if your business had to install plastic or plexiguard curtains or shields, like is often called sneeze guards, if you had to buy KN95 masks, if you had to purchase a significant amount of hand sanitizer, if you had a direct exposure in your office and you had to decontaminate, those kinds of expenses, again, are considered business costs that were business interruption costs. They were unanticipated costs. From what I understand, you can request those. That's not guaranteed that those would be covered, but again, you can request. Again, if you ask for mortgage interest, rent, payroll, utilities, either make sure that you did not receive and accept a payroll protection program or an EIDL loan. And if you did, you have clear record that you are asking for a different time period for funds for expenses that have not already been covered by one of those federal SBA programs. Because then, it's going to ask you for that brief description of what you're asking for, and then it's going to ask you, have these expenses been covered? Again, these are federal funds that have been sent to the state and that the state has set aside for small business grants. So certainly keep that in mind, and do not even take the chance of overlapping any coverages. You want to make sure you have extremely good documentation and very clear differentiation in the funds that you're asking for, and that they do not overlap. How much reimbursement for costs of business interruption in connection to COVID-19 are you asking for from the state? And here is a note of things you cannot ask for, that the grant cannot be used for, as reimbursement for cost or damages covered by insurance, for expenses that have been or will be reimbursed by any federal program, including PPP or EIDL. So again, if you have applied for PPP, I would caution you about requesting this fund for the same coverage, because if you have applied for and eventually receive, then you will be considered to be double dipping. For reimbursement to donors for donated items or services, for workforce bonuses or other hazard pay or overtime, severance pay, or for legal settlements. So please note, the grant cannot be used for any of those things. Even if they are COVID related, you cannot request the state fund for those things. The next question, do you certify that the amounts distributed to you through this program will not be used for the prohibited items noted above? So you are being asked to certify that your request is legitimate. And do you authorize the Department of Revenue to disclose to the Alabama Department of Finance and applicable federal agencies the information provided in this application for the CARES Act fund, together with any confidential return information necessary for the administration, disbursement, and audit of the CARES Act fund? Obviously, the state's got to make sure that they've got clear documentation for how they're spending federal funds, because the feds will require that of the state. Do you authorize public disclosure of your name and the amount of CARES Act funds received? So if you have any concerns or qualms about your business, receiving this fund and it being public information, you need to note that accordingly, because they reserve the right to make that disbursement public. So then you move on to the business information, and this is pretty straightforward. Name of business, is it a minority-owned business? This is a drop-down. Is it a veteran-owned business? It's a yes or no drop-down. The NAICS code, which you should have on your federal tax returns if you're unsure of what that is. The applicant's name, which of the following describes your business? Again, a drop-down menu. Your phone number, your email address, and then it's going to ask for direct deposit information. You can send it to your checking or your savings account, and then you'll need to put in your bank information. And then you must swear or affirm that the statements you've made are true, and that making false statements or providing false information is subject to penalty up to and including criminal penalties for perjury as provided in state code. So it's a very simple, that's it. That's the end of it. It's a very simple, you don't have to gather a ton of information. If you haven't applied for a PPP or an EIDL, it's an extremely simple process, because it's just a matter of determining your payroll expense and making that payroll, rent, mortgage, interest, and utilities expense and making that request. There's no indication that a full request, even like a full request of $15,000, would be granted, even if everything qualifies. I don't know exactly how they're going to determine the disbursements, if it's going to be based on the volume that applies, or if it's first request in. I do know the portal's still open, so I would assume that there's either funds remaining or that the determination of award will not be made until after the closure of the deadline. So that's pretty much it. It's straightforward. We just wanted to give you guys an opportunity. And then your final tab, obviously, you see there is review, but that's going to review all of the answers that you put in before you hit the submit. So we wanted to just give you a peek of what it looks like should you decide to apply for it. Also, in hopes that by giving this peek, anybody that might have been intimidated to make that application because they were fearful of how extensive the application may be, may feel a little better about applying. Does anybody have any questions? I will try to answer. I see Ken Grissom's on the line. He may have significantly more knowledge about this than I do and may be able to help with any questions that we have. So any questions from anybody? Ken, do you have anything that you would like to add to any of this? No? You're muted, so I can't hear you. There you are. I'm still not able to hear you. I'm not sure why. Well, can you put it in chat, Ken? Sorry, we have had some issues with audio with participants. I apologize for that. But if Ken has anything that he does want us to get out to you, I'm sure he will send it to us and we can get it out to everyone. If there are no other questions, that concludes. I told you it'd be about 30 minutes, and it took even less. It's a pretty short application form, pretty straightforward and direct. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to give us an email. Again, the deadline is midnight Saturday night, and while we love you, we may not check email as often on Saturdays, so you probably want to get those questions in before 5 p.m. on Friday to make sure that we see them in time to try to find answers for you. So if there are no other questions, that concludes this this very informal, brief webinar. We thank you all for tuning in. Have a good day, everybody.